Towards a New Architecture is a manifesto that laid the foundations of modern architecture. In the early 20th century, the author Le Corbusier radically redefined how buildings should look, function, and even think. In this video, we will cover 4 topics. 1. The author and book. And 2. 3 reminders to architects. And 3. Regulating lines. And 4. Architecture or revolution. Now let's get started. 1. Author and book. Let's begin with the context behind this text. Le Corbusier was not just an architect. He was a provocateur, a thinker, and arguably one of the most influential figures in shaping modern architecture. Writing in the early 20th century, he was responding to a world that was rapidly changing due to industrialization, new materials, and new ways of living. Towards a New Architecture, originally published in 1923, is less a traditional book and more a collection of essays, almost like a manifesto. It pulls heavily from articles he had written earlier and brings them together into a clear, forceful argument. Architecture must evolve. And here's a key tension running through the entire book. On one side, you have historical styles, ornament, and tradition. On the other, you have machines, industry, efficiency, and logic. Le Corbusier firmly positions himself on the side of a machine age. But, and this is important, he's not arguing for cool, soulless building. Instead, he's asking if ships, airplanes, and cars can achieve such clarity and beauty through function, why can't architecture? For example, he made it cheaper for airplanes in this book to discuss how their adjustable chairs with a movable reading desk, a shelf for your coffee cup, and whatever they designed efficiently and compactly for the function. And he concluded that every modern man has the mechanical sense to encourage architects to follow the new modern era. 2. 3 reminders to architects. To make a strong manifesto against the machine age, he first tried to define the important elements of practice for architecture. This is one of the most practical and enduring sections of the book. Le Corbusier boils architecture down into 3 fundamental elements: mass, surface, and a plan. Let's take them one at a time. Mass. Mass is about the pure form of a building. Its volume, its geometry, how it occupies space. Le Corbusier emphasizes that great architecture begins with simple, clear shapes. Cubes, cylinders, spheres, these are not arbitrary. They are forms we instinctively understand. His point is that complexity shouldn't come from decoration, but from the intelligent composition of these basic forms. For contemporary architect, this translates into a powerful question: is your building legible at a glance? Surface. Surface is what wraps the mass. It's what we see first. Here, Le Corbusier criticizes excessive ornamentation. He argues that decoration often hides poor design rather than enhancing good design. Instead, surfaces should express structure, proportion, and clarity. Light, shadow, and materials should do the work, not apply decoration. Think about how this resonates today with minimalism and material honesty. Plan. And then we arrive at what he considers the most important: the plan. The plan is a generator. This means everything. Structure, circulation, form should emerge from well thought out plan. Not the facade, not stylistic decisions, the plan. For young architects especially, this is a crucial takeaway. A beautiful rendering can't save a weak plan. And for experienced architects, it's a reminder. Clarity at a conceptual level still matters, no matter how complex your projects become. 3. Regulating lines. Now we move into the more subtle but deeply powerful idea, regulating lines. At first glance, this might sound overly technical or even outdated, but it's surprisingly relevant. Regulating lines are essentially invisible geometrical frameworks that organizes a design. They create relationships between different elements, alignments, proportions, rhythms. Le Corbusier believed that when a design follows these underlying rules, it feels harmonious, even if the viewer isn't conclusively aware of why. This connects architecture to something much older, classical proportion systems, like those used in ancient temples or Renaissance buildings. But here's a twist. He's not advocating for copying classical styles. He's advocating for using the same discipline of proportion in a modern context. So instead of the ornament, you get order. Instead of the decoration, you get coherence. For today's practice, this raises an interesting challenge. In an era of parametric tools and algorithmic design, are we still intentional about proportion? Or are we sometimes outsourcing harmony to software? Regulating lines remind us that good design isn't accidental, it's structured, even when it looks effortless. 4. Architecture or revolution. This is probably the most provocative chapter in the book. Le Corbusier makes a bold claim. If architecture doesn't adapt to modern needs, society will face revolution. To understand this, we need to look at the historical context. He was writing after World War I, during a time of social unrest, housing shortages, and massive inequality in living conditions. Cities were overcrowded, housing was inadequate. Industrialization had changed how people lived, but architecture hadn't catch up. So when he says architecture or revolution, he's not being poetic, he's being literal. He's arguing that good design, especially housing, can improve quality of life, restore dignity, and stabilize society. In other words, architecture is not neutral, it has social consequences. This idea still feels incredibly relevant today. Think about calling global issues, housing crisis, urban inequality, climate change. The question becomes, are we designing a way that responds to these challenges or ignoring them? Le Corbusier's answer is clear. Architects have a responsibility. If we fail to act, the consequences won't just be aesthetic, they'll be societal. So here's the summary. So what do we take away from all of this? At its core, towards a new architecture is not just about a style, it's about a shift in mindset. Le Corbusier is asking architects to move away from imitation and toward intention. From 3 reminders architects, we learn that good architecture starts with fundamentals. Clear mass, honest surface, and above all, a strong plan. From regulating lines, we are reminded that great design isn't random. It's guided by proportion, geometry, and an underlying sense of order, even if that order is invisible. And from architectural revolution, the message expands beyond the design to responsibility. Architecture isn't just about buildings, it shapes how people live and ultimately how societies function. And put together, these ideas form a simple but powerful framework. Be clear in your forms, be intentional in your proportions, be responsible in your impact. For young architect, this is a foundation. For experienced architect, it's a recalibration. Because even today, nearly a century later, the challenge remains the same. Are we designing for appearance or for living? And the question is what keeps this book relevant? Thanks for watching ArchLadder. We've reviewed this book, and we hope you will have the opportunity to read the actual text and learn more about it. And still, we just have a app, the ladder of knowledge of all of architecture, art, and the design. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below.